the somebody's been killed there, a plow driver. The one over on Highway 550 is from a fatality. The we have a thing called the Avalanche Hazard Index, and it just measures how much what the probability of a moving vehicle getting hit by an avalanche is. And if it's really, really high, we either mitigate with explosives or we build avalanche shelter or snow shelters like that, or mounds like you see in the 160s. But it's all in all, mitigation using explosives to do stuff like that is pretty cheap compared to the infrastructure cost of a snow shed. So, partners with the Know Before You Go program, they're all over the place. Avalanche Canada, everybody pitched in to put this program together. And this is, like I said, this is a modified version of it because I'm putting a lot of Rio Grande forest information into it. But the heart of the program is nationwide, and it's been put on by all of our sponsors. So no, I'm not going anywhere. I'm froze. There we go. So this isn't a you're not going to get a merit badge out of this class. You're not going to get anything out of it other than awareness. Anytime you're playing in the mountains where there's snow on the mountains, there's a possibility of avalanches. So if you're going to be in the mountains in the wintertime, do what you can to learn about them. This is a great start. So yeah, by all means, I appreciate the interest in it. It makes our jobs easier, makes everybody's jobs easier. It makes the plow drivers, it makes the ski patrollers, everyone's jobs easier if everybody knows what the hazards are as they're playing in the mountains in the wintertime. If you want to learn more, look up an ARI course. Look up a level 1 ARI course, or find somebody that's really experienced in the woods, in the snow, and go skiing with them. Your best time, best experience, best knowledge is skiing with somebody in the woods or in the snow. Colorado is it's by far and above the deadliest state in avalanches. You can theorize why that is, and my personal thought is and we pump a ton of people into the high mountains, very, very close to the wilderness borders. We dump people off via ski lifts right next to avalanche terrain, and they can go directly in. They can leave the ski areas and go put themselves into avalanche hazard very easily. So it's a mix of having one of the world's most unstable snow climates and the ready access to it. And again, you can see how by how far, it's not just a few here and there. We're double of any other state in the country. So it's a huge difference. So and most avalanche accidents most actual fatalities are caused by asphyxiation. There's plenty of snow or plenty of oxygen in the snowpack. So if you get buried, it's not that there's a lack of oxygen. It's the fact that you're re-inspiring your carbon dioxide, the stuff that you've already expired. So, and that goes into the snowpack and then takes over and dominates the air in the snowpack, and you can't breathe anymore. About a quarter of the people are beat up, and they get pummeled into the trees, into the rocks, and they die of trauma. And then, a very small percentage of them die of hypothermia. And that hypothermia is even more so narrowed down by what's called after-drop. So when you're in the snowpack, you're fairly well insulated. And once somebody digs you out, then your body goes into what's known as after drop, and that's from not being insulated anymore, and then you die of hypothermia. So that's one of the things that we really watch when we're digging people out is to make sure that we're ready to treat them appropriately. This is another good one. 9 out of 10 accidents, 9 out of 10 avalanches that are catching people. They're triggered by themselves or somebody in that group. You have to have very, very bad luck to be hit by a natural avalanche. Very bad luck. Or very bad luck to be hit by an avalanche that was triggered by somebody skiing a slope above you that was not in your group, that didn't know you. Not to say it can't happen, but it certainly lowers your chances. So what is an avalanche? We deem it anytime the snow's moving down a steep slope. It can be a slough, it can be a wet slab, it can be a dry slab. Basically, we wanted to go very vague and say anytime there's snow moving down a hillside, we call it an avalanche, because if you get too far into the specifics of it, you're gonna rule some people out, and that's basically we want to make sure that everybody's aware of the destructive power. Even if it's just a loose, dry slough, it's still considered an avalanche and it can still bury you. So this is a better picture of the Alberta's cousin, 1st of January this year. That crown's about 10 feet deep, 12 feet deep up under the liquors left. And that was triggered by explosives from Davey Pritchett, the owner of Wolf Creek Ski Area and his ski patrol director. And it's just a good visualization of what an avalanche is. This is the moneymaker type of avalanche. This is a dry slab. You can tell it's a slab because it's got a big crown up on top of it, where the plate broke. And it, that fracture propagates across terrain features. That's obviously not the only avalanche type that you can have. But those are the money makers. Those are if you're into fire, wildfire, those are the crown fires. Those are the ones that make everything, the money making shots. There's all sorts of types of avalanches, and I'm going to say this now. Those big avalanches, I've dug way more people out of the small cut bank type avalanches than I have of those big moneymaker avalanches. Everybody's scared of the avalanche pads that are called the Battleship and the Anvil and the Widowmaker. Nobody's really scared of the little ones that are small little cut banks as they're getting out of the ski area. This is a pretty small path right here, and it's very typical to exit a ski into something like this. So you can see it doesn't take a whole lot. Huh. See if we can get there. Was the sound working on that one? I can't see anybody anymore. So, Hannah, can you tell me if the sound was working on that?
Nope, it didn't come through on that one.
It was not.
Okay. Well, sometimes the sound works on these, sometimes it doesn't. So breaking down the avalanches again, you can break these down into slab and loose snow. Loose dry, they're pretty, I won't say harmless, but you can stand up in them as long as they're not moving too fast. I'll stand on the bottom of them. Loose wet, it's like standing in a bowl of oatmeal that's somebody pouring out. Known for tweaking your knees and just jamming you up. They're not easy to escape. When you get into slab avalanches, dry slabs, they're fast moving, they're very quick. They break, they knock your feet out from underneath you. They just take your breath away. And then a dry, or excuse me, a wet slab avalanche is kind of a mix between the both. It's just a miserable. You cannot escape them. There's really no escape, and they're heavy, and they tend to be very destructive too. They tend to take trees out, and they're the ones that will travel on really low angled slopes as well. So anywhere there's a steep enough slope, and then an avalanche can occur. As long as it has snow and it's steep enough, you can expect to see an avalanche. We'll get into what is a steep enough slope here shortly, but as we talk about Colorado, at least most of the accidents are starting to happen around the ski areas. Again, that's because we're pumping people up to the very top of the hill, and ski lifts drop them off within 30, 40 feet of the ski area boundary. The ski area boundaries are usually well marked with signs like these that say there's no control, there's no avalanche mitigation, and there's no patrol work back there. But it makes it very easy for what is commonly known as the side country or the slack country. Or if Greg or Hannah want to jump in on whether or not I can use the term side country, the White River does not like me using that at all, using that term, because it's backcountry.
Well,
so when we say
this is Greg, Matt, yeah, we would prefer backcountry too, but understanding that the side country is a little bit more understandable. The fact of the matter is, if it's outside of that ski resort boundary that we permit the ski area with, in this particular case, Wolf Creek, then it is backcountry, and in the truest sense of the word, because there's no patrol, there's no expectation of any kind of control or rescue or those kind of capabilities.
Yep, and that's the White Rivers. And I'm assuming it's all Region 2 real area and Forest Service wide. It's black or white. It's either controlled or it's not. There's no middle ground. And I think that the term side country is good for visualization, but I think it is also it's probably bad for getting people into a position where they think it's a little bit safer than it really is. So you're probably right. It's just terminology. So when we talk about control work and what patrollers do on one side of the ridge versus outside the ski area boundary, we're talking about using explosives and other forms of mitigation to handle avalanche hazard. Like hand charges, closures, the 105 howitzer, the avalancher. A lot of times closure is the method of choice. That's why they get so upset when skiers and snowboarders are breaking through closures, because you never know, you might find somebody putting explosives into those closures. So do those guys a favor and stay out of closed areas. It's just not worth it. There's nothing more stomach wrenching is when you have an armed explosive burning and you throw it into a slope that you expect to avalanche, and you see somebody ski underneath you that busted a closure. It's gut wrenching to know that they may stop and say, "Hey, what are you guys doing up there?" And the explosive that you just threw is burning directly above them. So again, please respect those closures. It's huge. This is just I'm going to say it's a good thing that you can't hear the video on this. This is an avalanche around, and it's pretty good for watching the actual explosion, and then the way a dry slab avalanche propagates.
My AirPods just died on me. Can you hear me? You can hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. I had to change my headset real quick. Yeah, just a good for lack of good avalanche work. You know, this is what we try to do. Is the whole theory behind controlling and mitigating avalanche hazard is to keep them small so that it's less obtrusive into daily life, whether it be skiing for recreation or you know, closing Red Mountain Pass for 45 days like we did in 2019.
You're back.
Excuse me?
You were lost for a minute. You went
Oh, okay. So when we talked about steepness and we talk about how steep a slope has to be, we you know, below 30 degrees, you're really not going to see much avalanche activity. It's just not steep enough. You might see the alpha angles from something steeper, like in 2019 when we had that big avalanche cycle. You know, the runouts were running down into the 20s and even into the teens, but they weren't starting avalanches in those types of slopes. The money numbers are 30 to 37 being the 37 degrees being the magic number, and that's just the in between. And when you read some of our products, you'll see that when we're starting to get a little worried, we'll drop our travel advice down to say stay out of slopes 30 degrees or better. If we're feeling a little bit better, we'll say 35 degrees or better, and in moderate avalanche danger. And then once you get above 45 degrees, it's just too steep around here. In this snow climate, it's just too steep. Not enough snow sticks to that slope. So most of it's sloughing off and getting tossed. So it's not really, you don't see a lot of avalanches. The caveat to that is in 2019, it came in really wet. Those storms came in really wet, and it plastered a bunch of snow on incredibly steep terrain that normally wouldn't be holding snow. So it gave the avalanches that did happen even more volume, and that's one of the reasons why those were so destructive. Sure, I'm not going over my time here. So when we talk about terrain and steepness, you also have to look at the terrain around you. You can't just say, okay, I'm in a 28 degree slope right here, and I'm not going to worry about triggering any avalanches down in the trees. Look what's the slope above you. If you're hanging out in an open slope that's 28 degrees, and with a persistent weak layer like a surface hoar or a buried surface facet layer, it's very likely that you're going to trigger that slope above you. You're going to trigger that start zone above you, and it's going to smoke you down lower. We'll get into more persistent weak layers here shortly, but I'm getting kind of timed out, so I don't want to get too mired in the physics of things. You know, just some more pictures of what avalanches look like and where you can trigger avalanches from. You know, the guy in the upper right, you know, he's fairly safe. He's in low angle terrain above the slab. Nothing's hanging above him. If he was in low angle terrain below the slab, not a great spot to be in. Ridge lines, you know, those are pretty safe. The slab's not gonna break over the top and carry you over the other side of it. You know, it just they don't have that much tensile strength that they can do that. That it can do a kind of a suck back type of a motion. It's just not physically possible. The other side can break, but you know, you're standing on ridge line where there's nothing above you that's going to sweep you down. So if I have to choose, ridge lines are always my choice of safe routes. If you get caught, you know, some places are going to be really, really bad. The gullies the trees. When you get caught in the trees, you get mashed up against into the trees. You get just pulverized when you get over the cliffs and the rocks. So, even if the avalanche is small, you might hear us say something like in our morning discussion, if you get wiped off or swept off your feet, even in a small avalanche, be careful of what your consequences are if you're going to be swept over a cliff band, because the chances of hurting yourself in a cliff band are way higher than actually getting buried in a small avalanche. Lakes, there was a horrible accident last season where a snowmobiler got caught, took him into the lake and broke through part way through, and he was caught underneath the track of a snowmobile under the water. His son raced up and caught or tried to pull him out, but he was so far buried that he couldn't bury him out or undig him. So he basically watched his father die and drown in that lake. So just the consequences of even small avalanches they can be horrible. And then some of the consequences of large avalanches, are not that bad because they go into sweeping alluvial fan type of terrain features where it just kind of scares you. What I was talking about earlier with our snowpack this year on the Rio Grande, we honestly set up really well because we didn't have the weak basal layers that almost always happen in October. If you've been around a while, I'm sure you can remember you can put a pattern on it. You get the October snow during second or third hunting season or first or second hunting season. It sticks around, melts right up until the November, the Thanksgiving storm. All the lower terrain trees, all that stuff melts out except for the steep high elevation north and east facing terrain. They all hold snow. Unfortunately, that snow that holds on those elevation bands and those aspects becomes really weak, really weak. And that's what is Colorado's typical snowpack is you'll have 30 to 40 centimeters, about a foot of depth hoar, which is basically the ball bearings, the sugar snow that we all know. If you're in the snow, you punch through it, you get your snowmobile caught in it. And then you put the November, the Thanksgiving or early December storms on top of that, and it becomes really weak. So this is just a visualization of that. Sits there, and then you start building layers. You get into the next storm, and then you start building another persistent weak layer. And those persistent weak layers stay with us through almost the entire season, up and through March, at least in the areas like Slumgullion, the colder and drier paths. Down in Wolf Creek, we're so far south that the 2 degrees latitude that happens between here and say the central Colorado Rockies is a massive difference, and it helps stabilize the snowpack a lot. This is really more of a Slumgullion northern Rio Grande type of snowpack than what you see or early season around Wolf Creek. Just really bad, weak, faceted snow. And that likely fell in October or early November and then got a slab put on top of it. So slab over weak is always going to be dangerous. Oop. So just some more watching avalanches happen. You can see how they flow. It really flows like water, even though technically it's granular flow. It flows as water. It flows as a liquid motion. My boss will kill me if he hears me say that because it's technically a granular flow, but if you look at it, it's so close to liquid that it flows like that. So what can we do? What do we get? What do we need? We need the gear. We need the training. Again, this isn't a level 1 ARI course. This isn't a level 2. This is if we're saying stay out of the dog walking type trails in the extreme avalanche hazard days, this is just to know what we're talking about. So get the gear. We'll get into the gear a little bit more, but the basics are, you need if you're going to be in avalanche terrain, an avalanche transceiver, a beacon, a shovel, and a probe. And I'm really a proponent of avalanche airbags, and I'll get into those a little bit more and why. The reason we have all that is because of this. So if you're buried for 10 minutes, up to 10 minutes, you basically have a pretty good chance of surviving. So if you're skiing alone and you get caught, you get buried, you're pretty much done. That's, we teach self-rescue to partners. So all the gear is not for you, it's for your partners, and vice versa. So your transceiver, your beacon is not for well, your beacon is, yeah, but it's also for your partner. And your shovel is so you can dig out your partner. The probe is so you can dig out your partner, and your beacons so you can find your partner. Once you're down into 11 to 20 minutes, you're looking at maybe a third chance of surviving it. And then once you're in 21 minutes, man, you're pretty done. There was a fatality accident in Cameron Pass 2015, where two guys were buried, and actually one was a smoke jumper out of Boise, not a Forest Service jumper, but a BLM jumper, and he died, but his partner was buried for over 2 hours and he survived. So completely anomalous, but it does happen. When we talk about transceivers, this is quick down and dirty 3 antenna digital processed. If you're running with anything that's not digitally processed and not 3 antennas, it's time to upgrade. Because what happens is you can mask the other beacons. They're once all things mechanical fail. So once these get to that point where they're failing, not only are they not functioning at their proper rates and effectiveness, they're also actually hindering the rescues of others. So if you're still rolling with a single antenna analog beacon that sounds like beep beep beep, upgrade it. A few $100. It's well worth it. Your partner will thank you. Probes, 3 meters, 3 meter and above. I wouldn't go with any of the Skimo race type probes anymore. There's no use in having a 1.5 meter probe. You can see how, when we're digging people out, 1.5 meters is just skimming the surface on them, and a good quality shovel. Avalanche airbags, it's the only thing in our quiver that helps you stay on top of the snow. It's the only thing that's proactive, keep you from getting buried. If you get caught, you deploy it. It's a handle that sits up on your chest, and you pop it. It's like a reserve parachute. You pull the handle, and it makes this big balloon around you. The principle behind that is called the Brazilian nut theory, and the easiest way to explain it is if you take a bag of potato chips and you smash it, then you reach in, you go to the top, you're going to pull out the biggest chunk. If you're getting caught in an airbag or in an avalanche, the airbag makes you the biggest potato chip in the bag. It keeps you up on top. So avalanche, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on avalanche. If you have one, you know how to use it. Basically, it pushes the CO2 around the back side of you, so you're not re-inspiring it. And the Reco is a passive reflector, and some places have them, some places don't. Most clothing makers, boot makers are putting them in their boots, but again, live recovery with a Reco is not very probable. I can't say, I'm not a sponsor here, so but I'm not going to say that it's not won't happen, but it's not very probable. Here's the avalanche airbag in action, and like I said, I'm a big proponent of it. I never ski without mine. So this guy's skiing. He triggered something in the backcountry. and a big slide, not something you want to tangle with, not something you want to tangle with an airbag either. But you can see there, he pops it and he becomes the biggest chip in the bag. And skis away from it. Pretty definitive right there when you watch that. Some of the airbags will deflate in a few minutes after the motion of the avalanche is stopped, and gives you an airbag or an airspace. Again, going back to the 75% of the fatalities are caused by asphyxiation. You know, the only problem is if you don't have an airspace around your face. So that's what these airbags do. If they're the ones that deflate, they give you an airspace. If everybody was skiing with an airbag, it would, in the backcountry, if everyone was skiing in the backcountry that had an airbag, those fatalities would be reduced by about half. And obviously that's not including the professional workers, the plow drivers, the guys that are walking their dogs, didn't know that they were in avalanche terrain. No transceiver. Man, if you're not skiing with a transceiver, if you're not riding in the backcountry with a transceiver, whether it be skiing, snowmobiling, snowshoeing, whatever it is that you do, think that your chances of rescue are long past those 24 minutes, and that's only if you can get somebody to come out to you. Helicopters need good visibility to fly. And they need dogs, you know, to come and find you. And if the weather's bad, you know, I hate to say it, but SAR teams are not scared to say no. There's no reason to put their people, their resources in danger if they think it's just a body recovery. So they'll wait for better weather, and I don't blame them. I've made that decision many times and it sucks, but it's the truth. So your best option is self-rescue. Practice with it. Okay, courses. We've already talked about area courses. Those are the next level if you really want to learn about stuff. So when we go to the backcountry, the thing that we want now is we've got the gear, we've got some sort of a training, we've got at least awareness. Now we're talking about how do you know what you're looking for? Where do you go for? Is the avalanche danger high? Is it low? That's where we come in. We put out a product every day that will tell you every day from basically around November 1 to April 15th. We put out a product that'll say, in this particular spot, the avalanche danger is low, moderate, considerable, high, or extreme. And you know, it goes in, it's color coded for ease. And we basically use this as travel advice. You know, if we think that you're going to be able to trigger an avalanche, it's possible for a skier or a snowmobiler to trigger an avalanche. It's likely going to be at moderate. The avalanche danger is going to be moderate. If we think that triggering avalanche is likely, we'll bump it up into considerable. And you know, there's about 2 hours of conversation about our hazard rating every morning. So it's not quite as simple as I'm making it out to be right now. But every morning at about 4:30, all the forecasters in the state get together and we talk about every aspect of this. It is it's mind-numbing after a while when we get so minute into the details, but that's where we come up with whether or not, you know, the danger scale is. Most avalanche accidents occur at moderate or considerable. You know, it's just the red really gets you and keeps you out of the backcountry. The low, we go to low very carefully before we say that triggering an avalanche is unlikely. So we spend a lot of time at moderate and a considerable amount of time at considerable. So in the forecast, so what we're just looking at is what we call the first tier level. It's, if you just want to look at the map and say South San Juan's where the Rio Grande, the majority of the Rio Grande falls into the southern San Juans, portions of it, say the Lagaritas, going up towards Slum, Slumgullion, those all fall in the North San Juan. And you really have to be careful on that particular area, because the North San Juan is on this side of the divide. The Lagaritas, the Slumgullion, Baldy Cinco, those are very different snowpacks than what you would think of as in the South San Juan. So if you're going into that country, I would be very careful to make sure you're looking at the northern San Juan forecast, and even into the Gunnison forecast, because it's pretty representative of that side. On the second tier level, we get into a little bit more detail. We get into more detail of the problem type. This is the persistent slab avalanche problem. This one right here gets a lot of people. When we highlight the danger scale or the danger rows here, that's not meaning that southwest at any elevation, you're not going to find a persistent slab avalanche. What we're saying by highlighting these is that you're more likely to find a persistent slab avalanche, trigger an avalanche in any of these aspects that are highlighted. That's where you're most likely to. Not saying you're not going to over on this side. And if you're not used to looking at this, think of this as this lower ring as below tree line. Near tree line is the center, and above tree line is the peak. When we get into likelihood, and these are the things we talk about ad nauseum in the mornings, is the probability, the possibility, and the size of the avalanches, and that all goes into where we go, either green, yellow, red, or orange or black. Obvious clues. The most obvious sign of avalanche danger is avalanches. So if you see a lot of avalanches, whether they're happening, whether they're recent, fresh avalanches, that is the A1A indicator that you have enough hazard to trigger avalanches today. So no matter what we say, we are human, we make mistakes. So no matter what we say, if you see avalanches, it is possible for you to trigger an avalanche that day. If there's anything you can take out of this hour, take that, please. So looking for recent avalanches on similar slopes, that's one of the biggest things that you can take away from this is, don't go jumping into a slope that is adjacent to a slope that just avalanched. Cracking and collapsing and woomping, you'll see that, you'll feel it. It's a very guttural feeling. You can feel it on your snowmobile, even if you're full throttle on your snowmobile and it whoomps on you, you can still feel it, and it resonates at such a deep level, at a deep level on the decibel scale, and also in the fight or flight mechanisms of our body. It rolls fear through you. So you won't miss it if you don't know what I'm talking about. Look for recent wind loading. Wind loading is can put 10 times the amount of snow. So if you get 10 inches of snow on a straight down type of storm, and then you pick up the wind, expect 10 feet of snow on leeward slopes, like in Alberta is where the Cornice falls. More red flags is 1 to 2 inches of snow an hour. Lots of snow, heavy snow. And really, the snow doesn't like anything happening rapidly. It doesn't like warming temperatures really quickly. It doesn't like loading really quickly. It just doesn't like anything to happen to it quick. It's a super cool medium because it's one of the only mediums in the natural world that can rebuild breaks in its bonds, but it takes a little bit of time to do that. So getting right up at 6 here. So how do you stay out of avalanche way, right? I don't know the audience. I can't see the audience, but if you're a snowmobiler, and your buddy gets high marking and gets stuck, you know, your job is not to go up there and help dig him out. He got himself there. Your job is to heckle him and say, yeah, good job, dude. Good job. And wait for him to get down. He got himself there. He can get himself out. If you go running up there and you trigger it, then neither of you are helpful to each other. And neither of you are going to be drinking beer in the bar at the end of the night or doing whatever you do at the end of the evening, because you're both going to be buried. So let him dig himself out. As you're crossing avalanche prone slopes, you know, don't hold hands across the slope. Spread yourself out so that you, if one of you gets smoked, that the other one can dig you out. You know, looking at this picture on the skier or the lookers left here, probably a fairly stable snowpack, just looking at the rivulets running down it, but out of good habit, it is just a really, really bad line to get into that steep of a slope, skiing across a start zone like that with all that snow hanging above you when you could have just walked up the ridge and got to the exact same spot. You know, just bad form there. Same with the picture on the right. You know, these guys ski a slope. Obviously, they stopped, turned around, and watched their buddies come down and ski it on top of them. Again, really bad form, because basically, if somebody triggers something, you're going to get caught. All three of you are going to get buried there. You know, as we start talking about putting other people at risk, you know, there's some litigation going on up on I-70 on the loop road where snowboarders triggered an avalanche that they closed the loop road down and destroyed a couple of our Obelix exploders that we keep the roads open with. I can't say whether or not they're going to go to court, whether they're going to be prosecuted or not. But, you know, before you jump into a slope, think about the risks, not only to yourself, the consequences to yourself, but think about the consequences to other people. You know, make sure it's clear before you jump in. You know, you don't want to be the guy that buries somebody below you, you know, that was just skiing the same line that you did 30 minutes ago and, you know, was made a bad decision and eat lunch at the bottom. You don't want to be that guy. So the point of this, I'm going to start wrapping up. There's a few things we can do, right? Get the gear, get the training, the forecast, know how to use the forecast, look around, get the picture, right? The picture is, are there avalanches happening? Is there cracking, wolfing, signs of instability? And even if there's not, practice good habits, stay out of harm's way. Don't, you know, even if you're not seeing anything, even if we're saying that avalanche hazard is low, you know, there's nothing wrong with just skiing 20-degree slopes and having a good day, or not skiing steep slopes one or all in kamikaze style. You know, just practice good form. That's about all I've got. 6:04, 1 hour. Okay.
Perfect for television.
Perfect for television. So now, Greg, I can't see questions or anything. So Greg and Hannah.
If anyone has questions, if you can throw them in the chat or raise your hand, and we can ask Matt some questions. And thank you for all that awesome information.
Okay, so I stopped sharing there, right? Nobody sees my screen anymore. Okay. Yeah, if there's any questions, any more, like, I know I started motoring through a lot of stuff to make the 1 hour time frame there. If there's any more questions, or you want me to dive deeper into the forecasts, the products that we put out, or Rio Grande, Southern San Juans, Northern San Juans, let me know. That's what this time is for, I believe.
Yeah, we have a question. Someone asked, backpack, airbag, or a vest? I don't know if there's one you'd recommend, one over the other.
Depends on what your mode of travel is. what I would recommend. Sorry, I keep opening my AirPods and it switches back and forth. So I'll stop doing it. It's a nervous habit. It depends on what your mode of travel is. If you're on a snowmobile and you don't need a backpack, I would, a vest is a very good tool. The only problem with a vest is that if you're running a snowmobile with just a vest on, that means your shovel and probe are usually attached to your tunnel on your tunnel bag. And if you get smoked, you're not going to be the one carrying you're using your shovel and your probe, but it's just a good habit to keep your shovel and your probe on your body. So if you're going to use a vest, I would try to find one that has a shovel and a shovel and a probe. Will you please repeat what you said? On the vest or the airbag pack, if you use a vest, I would certainly use one that you can use. You can carry your shovel and your probe on your body when you're on a sled. You don't want to be separated from your shovel and probe, so you don't want that on your tunnel bag. And that's the only downfall of a vest.
And then we had a question about the Avalanche as well. You can just explain that a little more.
Pull up your questions. So the Avalanche is it's very similar to a snorkel, and the theory behind it is that you put it in your mouth either on a when you're going into avalanche terrain. If you're dropping into a steep slope, you put it in your mouth, and what it does is it's a one-way valve. You inspire just clean oxygen or ambient oxygen, ambient air, and then it expires your CO2 out behind you. So the snorkel, the part that would go above the water, is actually just around your back in the Avalanche, and so instead of breathing that expired CO2 in, you're breathing fresh air in from the snowpack. And the snowpack has plenty of air in it, so you can, there's certainly enough air that you can survive in there. The problem is, in theory, it's really good. The problem is that it's really, really difficult to get into your mouth and keep it in your mouth. I've been caught, carried, buried, dug out more than I care to talk about, but I've certainly had an Avalanche on me during a lot of those, and successfully had it in my mouth once, and then had it ripped out of my mouth after I had it successfully put in. And then all the other times I've had it on, you try to get it in and put it into your mouth, and they fail. And then by then you're getting swept around and beat up, and the last thing you want to do is start trying to put this thing in your mouth. So Black Diamond will kill me if I say don't buy an Avalanche, but I've never found them to be successful. My go-to for getting caught is curling up into the fetal position. And we can talk about airbags real quick, and if you don't mind. One of my biggest pet peeves is the airbags. We're telling people to buy these $1,600 airbags and not giving them any sort of direction on how to use it, where all the courses are steering towards the rescue equipment, the beacons, the shovels, the probes. And one thing that's proactive, the one thing that we can do to keep our butts from getting buried is learn how to actually pull the handle on your airbag. So you really need to train to that. If you're going to buy an airbag, trained to how to pull your handle, make sure it's always on. And I say that even though I know it sounds silly, but training to the actual motion to where it becomes autonomous or automatic, and it's like pushing the brakes on your car when something comes in front of you. You don't think about it. You just want that automatic response of look, reach, pull, and then you wait. Then go into the fetal position. You know, there's a lot of discussion about whether you should swim, whether you shouldn't swim. Again, from being caught, carried, buried, you know, deploy your airbag. That's the one thing that's going to keep you on top, and then get into the fetal position to protect your head, your neck, your airway, and go from there. So don't worry about where you're getting caught. If you can ski out of it, just pull the airbag. So the locals, all the local SAR teams respond to avalanche rescues. I'm just going off of Kelly Garcia. All the local SAR teams respond to avalanches. We did a training for the South Fork Fire Department on Saturday. They're heavily involved in SAR. Mineral County will respond. Rio Grande County, Archuleta County. Am I missing any other counties on the Hinsdale County? We train with Hinsdale County all the time with them as well. We also have around the state, we have CRAD, which is Colorado Rapid Avalanche Deployment, and they're dog teams. So anywhere that there's a EMS provider, air provider, so Flight for Life, Air Med, they have an agreement with ski areas that want to. It's, you know, you don't have to do it, that have avalanche trained dogs, rescue dogs that will so Flight for Life will get a message from the sheriff saying we've got a possible avalanche victim, say on Wolf Creek Pass in Gibbs Creek. The sheriff will then say, okay, launch CRAD, launch a Flight for Life with a team. They'll pick up a dog at the closest available dog and dog and handler team. And they also fly with a snow safety guy to do some hazard assessment. And then that all's being worked out with the SAR teams. So there's a few different resources, and all the SAR crews in the Rio that operate in the Rio Grande know about the CRAD program. So they're very, very well organized. So it kind of just depends on which ones, where you're at, as to which one's going to respond to you. The next one in the question is the gas and airbag. So the canisters, I thought I had a canister in here, but I don't. It's just a super high PSI. It's about 3,000 PSI, and the canister is about the size of my Diet Pepsi bottle. Fits into your airbag, and you pull the handle, it triggers a needle, and it inflates it. There's other types of those canisters are rechargeable. The South Fork Fire Department can recharge them. I believe Wolf Creek Ski Area can charge them. Basically any scuba shop can charge them. And if there's a backcountry, a provider of backcountry access gear, it's a name brand of those bags, that they can charge them as well. The other ones, there's a few of them that are, say, like the Black Diamond Jet Forces. Those operate off of a lithium-ion battery that has a really high power, high pressure fan and deploys the bag. And those are rechargeable. I really like those because you can deploy them multiple times in the field. And I know that it sounds like you're having a really, really bad day if you get caught twice in an avalanche and you have to deploy your airbag twice in the same day. It is a really, really bad day, but it happens. I I didn't think it would happen, but then when you think about it, you know, somebody gets caught in steep terrain, didn't pick everything off. There's still hang fire holding above them. Yeah, it's possible. It happened over on the 550 corridor last year several times. So yeah, the shout out to the CDOT crew. Those guys, I couldn't have been more impressed with them during that storm. Again, 10 feet in 10 days is a massive storm, and those guys, you know, we had some avalanche mitigation closures, and we also had some just straight up safety closures. And I don't know if anybody was up there during that period. You know, there was days where you couldn't see the hood on your truck for hours, and working really close with the plow drivers. You know, the last thing that they want to do is hit somebody with a plow, or get hit or go over the edge. But they also don't want to lose the road. So the longer that they don't plow, the worse the conditions are. So they want to stay on top of it as much as they possibly can. But there's just times when, like that week, it was just, you could not see anything. I usually don't drive around with the flashers on my truck going, and I think I use the flashers more on my truck that week than I have my entire career of being. Yes, I know what happened to the plow on the bank on the east side one day. Anyway, yeah, and I'll get to that, but the plow drivers, I mean, they're working 12. A normal shift for them is 12 hours, and during that period they were working 16-18 hour days, going home, coming back, and you know, nothing likes to work when it's that cold and miserable, and all things mechanical fail. So everything mechanical was failing during those conditions, and they still were able to keep the road amazingly well. Huge shout out. As far as the plow going down the on the east side, there was a new driver, started to have some equipment problems on that one, and he just couldn't see. It got to the point where he could not see anything, and he thought he was in the road, and he ended up being in that wide spot right across from Park, or just east of Parks Creek, and went over. I think it was a couple hour closure, so it wasn't a great day, but you know, I can't say I just drive a little Ford F-150 and on the highway, so driving one of those things is pretty intense. Did I answer all the questions?
You did, Matt, and I got to tell you, there are a lot of folks on here. You learned that from me recently, but I used to plow snow on US 611 Pass in my off seasons, and I can tell you, I know exactly what these guys on Wolf Creek are doing. And when there are very few accidents with the plow trucks, as we see on Wolf Creek, I'm just stunned, because it's a beastly job to do. It's incredible. The little boy gets to come out in you when you're mashing a plow truck through feet of snow and grabbing a loader and shoving tons and tons of snow. And then the monotony of being in one of those snow blowers that just sits there and grinds through feet and feet of snow. And just like Matt said, folks, that's 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18-hour days. Go home, get a nap, and come back and do it again during those huge storm cycles. But yeah, I thank you for whoever said the shout out, because those folks, they do it. And when we get a road to drive on, just think about this: at the Continental Divide, in the Rocky Mountains, during a heat of the moment snowstorm, when we actually have a road to drive on, I'm grateful. I don't even really care what it looks like.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And
And I guess I would also add to the forecasters that work so closely with those plow operators, because those guys know the terrain as good as anybody. And if they get worried that they don't want to be up there on that road, as I did so many days on Love Pass, I call the forecasters and they call in to the state office and say, well, go ahead and shut the road down now. If Greg doesn't want to be there, I don't.
yeah,
So yeah, huge shout out to you guys for helping keeping us safe.
yeah. Like I said, I worked in the backcountry side of things, and then in the ski areas, and by far I really enjoy working with the plow drivers, because I just, like in that one picture where the guy's, carrying the 105 around, he doesn't care what he looks like. He doesn't care if he's cool. He doesn't care if he's wearing the latest Patagonia gear or not. He's just doing his job and wants to go home at the end of the shift. So yeah, can't say enough about those guys. So,
Well, right on, Matt. I think we'll go ahead and wrap this bad boy up. So we do have those few items to give as door prizes. Matt, hang on for us a little bit. Hannah, you're on. Have you done the drawing already for us?
I sure have.
Yay!
Yeah, so this week's our two winners are Adam Moore. You won the SJMA water bottle, and then Doug Oren, you won the Rio Grande National Forest mug. So if you could send me your email or phone number, some contact info, you can direct message me. That will work on getting it to you. You can also stop by the Divide Ranger Station to pick those up. So congratulations on that. And just to sort of check in, next month we will have our Forest Specialist series right back here on Zoom. Next month we're having animal adaptations in winter, and that'll be February 16th again at 5 p.m. and we hope to see you there. And thank you all for joining us. And again, if you'd like us to keep you in the loop with these programs and future programming, or to get the recording for today, please send me your email and I'll try and get that out to you.
Yeah, thanks, Hannah. I appreciate that. And I guess more than anything, I sure appreciate, Matt, you taking the time to develop your presentation for us and share it with us. I guess I'd ask you your last words. I think I know what your last words for this presentation might be, is if you got anything out of today, what is it? And thank you again, Matt. We sure appreciate you being here.
if you got anything out of today, if you're in the backcountry and you see avalanches, that's your A1A indicator of that you can trigger an avalanche today. So
yeah, you said it before, and I can't echo that enough. I mean, once you start seeing activity, boy, that's the time where your awareness should be just peaked. And maybe it's just time to not be there anymore. So I appreciate you telling us that, because
yeah,
that alone can keep us safe.
and yeah, Steve, yeah, the best way to ride powder is first. So it's in a direct message here, but thank you very much.
Yeah, well, you may ride it a lot longer than you might hope to. Well, again, Hannah mentioned it, everybody. Look for us on Facebook and our webpage, and we'll post the next event for the Forest Specialist series next month at this same bat time and channel. Thank you so much for this great participation. We appreciate you all, and have a wonderful winter. Be safe out there.